Draft Chaff coming up this week. Because I don't think keeping these Bloomburrow creatures as pets would be ethical. They seem to be autonomous and sentient and all that.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting discussion.
All I needed was for them to not draw a good card. You'll never guess what they drew.
The name is actually a giveaway. It's called Thunder Trap Trainer.
Thunder the Trap. Yeah. What's up, aficionados? Welcome back to Draft Chaff. This is episode 210. I'm Ben, one of your hosts, and joining me live on the line is Tyler. Enjoying the rain?
Yeah, no, it's actually, I'm not going to lie, I am. There's nothing better than working from home, playing Magic while working from home, and it raining, Yeah. But nice lo-fi vibes.
Oh, yeah. Did they... I think I saw somewhere there was a new one of those like lo-fi girl things going around. I think.
Oh, really? Oh, man,
yeah.
I fall asleep to those things still sometimes.
Yeah. Anywho, today we've got our rare roundup. We're going to chat all about the rares, mythics, higher rarity nonsense that we've been enjoying so far in Bloomburrow. But of course, before we get there, we've got some housekeeping things to address. If you're not in the Discord, what are you doing? Come hang out with us. We love chatting with everyone in Discord, seeing what decks people are playing, just discussing all sorts of nonsense. We've been talking about, I don't know, apparently some U.S. politicians are getting into Magic. It sounds like both their decks and social views are kind of gross. So all sorts of nonsense in there. Patrons, thank you so much. You are the reason that we can continue to make this show and honestly afford our editing stuff. If you're interested in supporting us on Patreon, you can hop over there and support us for the equivalent of $0.25 an episode, which, if we've brought that much enjoyment to your life, then we'd really appreciate it. Again, we are your dancing minstrels, and we will take whatever coinage you can spare. And by the way, something pretty cool that's just really started up this week. We've been putting out a lot of stuff on YouTube, a lot of behind the scenes. We had one gameplay video sort of pop off, got a couple hundred views, and we were like, wow, that's kind of cool. Let's lean into that, right? So go check out that video. I kind of took down the arena servers by making a bunch of rats. At least that's the story I want to tell myself. So, but we have some full drafts uploaded, ones of both Tyler and I live drafting together, and then a couple individual ones from both of us. And we uploaded the video every single day this week. So if you'd like some, nice draft gameplay videos to have on your second monitor while working from home in the rain, then hit it up. All right. So for our Cracker draft this week, I've got a Pack 1, Pick 2 to show off. Pack 1, Pick 1 was Muera, Trash Tactician. That's the 3-mana 2/4. When you expend 4, you gain 3 life. And when you expend 8, you, what is it, like Impulse? The top 2 is Impulse Draw? That's the
I believe
that,
so,
right?
Yeah.
The top 2. And then that lets you chain, and then you start gaining 3, and then you draw more cards. It's a good card in Raccoons. And honestly, any red-green deck would play it. And there's also something about floating mana for Raccoons, but that's just, cherry on top. Good card already. But I found a pretty tough follow-up. So here, running through the cards, we've got a Seed Pod Squire, the 4-mana 3/3 flyer. Birds is really just not what you want to be in this format, unfortunately.
Big unfortunately.
Yeah. Pod Profit, I do like. Frogs, here's the thing about the Frogs deck. I think it's very strong if you get the high rarity payoffs like Glarb or the Worry Wart, whatever that guy's name is, the 3/3 Vigilance that lets you kind of bounce stuff back to your hand. Or if you even get the Signpost Uncommon, the Lily Splash Mentor. But if you have a kind of medium to bad Frogs deck, you're just playing a pile of 1/1s and 2/1s and 1/2s, and it just can't win games against anything going even a little bit taller than you. Because you're playing blue-green, you're not really playing a bunch of combat tricks. Maybe like an Overprotect or something, or a Shore Up, but you're not able to punch through damage. I found that's like a big weakness to the Frogs deck. They need to just sit back, bounce themselves over and over again,
Stay in the rain.
Card advantage. Yeah. So I don't mind playing a bunch of Pawn Profits, but I do feel like I want a reason to do it, There's a Moonrise Cleric in this pack. We're just hybrid cards all the way down the line. This clearly doesn't fit with the Muera, right? But neither really do the Pawn Profit or Seed Pod Squire. There's a Head of the Homestead. This is the green-white 3/2 that makes 2 1/1s. This card is good. Like, the green-white deck is the best deck in the format right now, and Head of the Homestead is a big reason why. This just can go so wide, and if you ever get to flicker or recur it, then the Bunnies they do what Bunnies do, right? High Stride is next, kind of like a mediocre combat trick. Have you played this one really?
Yeah, I mean, it's not bad. The fact that it untaps the creature is really the most important part of this card. It kind of scary defense out of nowhere.
Sassacap's Brew. I haven't been super impressed with this. Like, I guess blue-red can play it, but you don't really want to be there. And if you gift them a fish, you can target one of your things for Valiant. I don't know. Not a big fan of this. Next, we have a card that I am a big fan of, and that's Glide Dive Duo. 5 mana 3/3 drain for 2 on ETB. Good in bats, good in lizards, good in any black deck as a top end.
Yeah, this is one of the cards that I wasn't super high on in the early time, and you were, and I've since changed. Yeah, this card, it's actually really good.
Yeah. This is Siege Rhino, right?
Yeah, flying Siege Rhino.
Yeah, I love cards like this that can come in and stabilize your life total a little bit, while also it's not a good blocker, but it's not a bad blocker. Like, look, it blocks the Seed Pod, the Moonrise Cleric, a lot of the little flyers in the set get flanked by a 3/3 flyer. Pearl of Wisdom. Too bad otters aren't good. Oh man, I lost yesterday to an otter deck. It was by far the best otter deck I have ever seen. Better than the one that I managed to trophy with that had Ral and everything. They had 3 of the Stormcatcher Mentor, whatever, the blue-red uncommon. They had a bunch of Pearls of Wisdom, and it was just kill spells. I don't know what was happening in their draft, but I counted at least 6 different red burn spells that they had. Just snipe your creatures. They had Coruscation Mages and the Tap Pingers, and then they had like one of the Seasons too. They had an awesome deck.
Sounds pretty nutty.
Yeah, that being said, I mean, Pearl of Wisdom, I'm just not really interested in taking this early.
No, definitely not. I mean, obviously it's great in those otter decks, and especially if you have the Mentor out in otters, it's a 1 mana draw too.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Of those commons, I mean, we're not really seeing something that pairs with Moira. The thing I'd want most here is probably like a take out the trash, like a deal or an Agate Assault or something, just like a good removal spell. Something hopefully to help you expend 4, even like a Polywallop I would have taken here.
Yeah, agreed.
Next up, we have a Peerless Recycling. That's the 2 mana instant, return a permanent from grave to hand, and if you gift them a card, you can get something else back. This is a bit of a weird one. You can do it in blue-green, because sometimes you wind up with enough like green self-mill that blue-green winds up with like a bit of a threshold squirrels thing going on, like the threshold stuff from blue. If you have like the 3/2 uncommon that surveils once a term, or in green you wind up with like cash grabs or something, then Peerless Recycling can be interesting in like a blue-green deck. But I don't know, like have you played this one? Like gifting feels really bad on this one because it's just card for card, right?
Something I think you're not considering here is it does have a raccoon on the art, so it officially works in Moira.
Okay. I guess it's raccoon typal.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really do what we want if we want to keep or pick one. It's a fine card. Like regrowth effects are always good, but we're not actively filling our graveyard. If we're impulsing off the top of Moira, so we're not putting cards into our graveyard. So
yeah. So I guess you might tell me that this next one, Playful Shove, is also a raccoon card. Is that right?
Oh, definitely, right? I think that's how that works, right? You go off the art of the Magic card to determine the type.
Honestly, in this set, you're better off doing that than most sets. So Playful Shove is the 2 mana deal 1 draw card. It is a sorcery. Man, I wish that was an instant for the Otter's sake, but no, I guess that would just be too good. I don't really know what the home is for this one. I guess Otters likes it because it's a spell and it cycles, but
Otters like it. I had played in the Lizards deck, and I thought that was pretty good because you can guarantee main phase 1 pinging for 1 if you want to try to do something for combat damage. That's about it. Yeah, it doesn't really feel like it fits anywhere.
We've got another uncommon here, Hazel's Nocturne. A lot of instant speed things that are usually sorceries in this set, right? This is a 4 mana instant, return 2 creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. Each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Very similar to Peerless Recycling. The black-green decks have no shortage of ways to regrowth stuff to hand. Yeah. Nocturne is a pretty good way of doing it, though.
Yeah, I actually won an RCQ over the weekend with Hazel's Nocturne. Opponent was at 1. I top decked this card and drained them for 2 off this card. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's intended purpose, but it's still hilarious nonetheless.
Yeah, just 4 mana drain. 4 mana little maybe lightning helix.
Exactly.
And then we've got Into the Floodmaw as our last card here. That's the blue bounce spell. If you get the tap fish, then you can bounce any non-land permanent instead of just a creature. I haven't actually cast this card yet. Doesn't seem great to me.
It's fine. And again, I played this in the Otters deck. It's a nice little tempo card. especially if you have those prowess triggers.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing really working towards the vector you kind of started to draft with pack one. You know, like this is a really tough thing. You almost got to take a look at it like this is pack one, pick one, like reset. Like what's the card here you want the most?
That's pretty much exactly what I did. I slammed the head of the homestead.
And that's probably the right choice because that's the strongest vector. Head puts 3 bodies on for 5. You could play it with Moyo potentially. You know, those hybrid cards are nice to have that option with.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely gets you, it gets you expend 4 right off the bat because it's a 5-mana spell, and it kind of gets you towards expend 8. I have actually expended 8 with Moira before. Wow. The funny part was, it was when I was playing blue-black, and I cast Kidnap on their Moira. And then I started chaining and gaining all the life and getting all the extra cards. It was pretty sick. Usually Kidnap, Kidnap's funny. It's sort of like a 4-mana pacifism.
Yeah.
I guess leaving
it gets better.
Rare Roundup, right? So we are rare roundupping this week. We're rounding up a whole bunch of rares. Now here at Draft Chaff, we love ourselves some Draft Chaff. And while we usually focus on commons, it is good to talk about some of the rares. I think Kidnap is a classic Draft Chaff card. This is the 2 blue. It's an aura. It has gift a card on it. It enchants a creature. When it ETBs, you tap the enchanted creature. If you didn't promise the gift, you put 3 stun counters on it. This is worse than most control magic effects because it taps the thing no matter what. So even if you gift them a card and then it comes in unstunned, it's still tapped so that you can't steal a thing to act as a blocker. It's going to be tapped when you get it. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I know it's such an interesting effect. Like, it really doesn't feel like a great card. Like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is cheaper than most of these kind of like steal, like permanently cards you see in blue. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's like you're not really getting the much value out of it. Yeah, I don't know why they had to tap it. It doesn't make sense to me.
I have found that you can use this to good effect if you steal a creature with like a passive effect, and maybe the power and toughness isn't really what you're getting out of it the most. I forget what that one card is called. It's the mouse, the 4-mana 2/3, and at combat it gives something plus X plus O, where X is power. I kidnapped that, and that I was able to use to pretty good effect because I had like a cheap blue flyer in play, and I was able to just smack in for 4 every turn in the air.
Rainbow Guard Captain is a really good card. Yeah, that's a good point for Kidnapped. You know, get those effects. You know, eventually the card will untap, and then you will have that body. But try to get the most amount out of it as possible.
And Where was actually the perfect thing to kidnap because then I start gaining 3 life every turn, and then I'm sort of being paid off for not affecting the board anyway. We've got a whole bunch more rares and mythics we'd like to talk about. Some that have been overperforming and some that have been under. Why don't we just dive into it? You want to talk about this this little frog here? This one I think is one of the best rares in the set.
Yeah, let's talk about Dream Drew Enchanter. This is the 3/4 for 4 mana, 1 green, 1 blue. Reach, when it enters, you tap up to 1 target creature and put 3 stun counters on it. If you do control that creature, though, you draw 2 cards. I didn't like the frog vector at first because it felt so counterintuitive to what you want to be doing. You want to be bouncing your own board. It feels so negative. And I felt like this was like the antithesis of that. Like, you're going to stun your own creatures for value. Didn't feel great. But there's so many ways to bounce your cards back to hand. It just resets those counters. And the kind of the value in you can get going with this is just crazy. Like, you play a Pawn Prophet turn 2, draw that card. You get this Dream Drew out, draw another 2, bounce the Pawn Prophet with another effect, and kind of just get this loop going.
Yeah. And if you wind up with a tapped pawn, man, these frog cards are impossible.
I know, right? They're slippery.
Yeah. If you wind up with a tapped Pawn Prophet, it was a 1/1. It had already drew you a card. Like, who cares? The Dream Drew, if you can flicker this thing too, this is funny. You can think of it almost as like modal. If this instead said, like, when it ETBs, you can sack a creature you control if you do draw 2 cards, and it said nothing else on it, that'd be pretty good too. And honestly, putting 3 stun counters on a creature, that is functionally removing it from the game. Like, if you do that to your opponent's 5/5 or something, there's a great chance the game ends before that thing ever untaps. And if you get to flicker this with something like a Splash Portal or the Bird Duo, or even just the Lily Catch Mentor.
There's so many flicker effects.
Yeah. I mean, this is maybe the best flicker payoff in the set.
I agree. So this card, and then there's an uncommon Splash Lasher, which also ETBs and puts stun counters on. If you get to late game with a ton of mana, like Simic often does, and you just keep bouncing either of those cards and just lock down the opponent's board. It's pretty nasty.
Next one we want to talk about here is Byway Barterer. This card is quickly becoming a pet card of mine. Not a card pet, because I don't think keeping these Bloomburrow creatures as pets would be ethical. They seem to be autonomous and sentient and all that.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting discussion.
Yeah, we'll draw a line somewhere, and I don't know where that line is. But Byway Barterer, this is a 3-mana 3/3 menace. And it says whenever you expend 4, you may discard your hand, and if you do, draw 2 cards. This card is awesome. It reminds me sort of, I think it was Moonveil something, like Moonveil Regent, one of the old dragons from the most recent Innistrad set. And that was similar. You could, like, whenever you were casting spells, you could pitch your hand, draw cards. What I like about this is that there's a puzzle to solve. And that's when can you make it optimal to discard your hand and draw 2 cards? The optimal time for that is when you have just cast a 4-mana spell from your hand and it was the last thing you cast from your hand. Because then discarding your hand and drawing 2 is totally cool.
Yeah, this is a card. Yeah, again, I guess I just undervalued a lot of these things. Like, this just feels like a mono red burn card, like you'll see in like standard or something like that. But it's effective in this. Especially if you can loop it. Like, if you can expend 4 with the 2 cards you drew and then have that kind of loop to another hand. Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Yeah. By the way, I wanted to mention the Dream Dew Entrancer. Man, that's hard to say. It's currently the 3rd best rare, not counting mythics, just the 3rd best rare in the set.
Oh, wow.
Valley Quest Caller and the Feckin' Green Shell. It's got a 64.5 game in hand win rate right now. And the Barter is quite a bit further behind, but it is still doing very well at 57% win rate. I mean, that's only in the 50s. You know, it's not like one of these busted ones like the Dream Dew, which is 64%. Like, that's nearly 2/3 of the games you have that thing in hand, you're winning. That being said, the Barter, I think, does require a little more setup, but I really like this. Plus, it's just a 3/3 menace. You can just smack in with this.
All right, the next card let's take a look at is Hearthborn Battler. This is the 2/3 for 3 red Lizard Warlock. It has haste, and it says whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, Hearthborn Battler deals 2 damage to target opponent. I had this in my first sealed pool. I thought this was like a lateral effect, meaning like if my opponent played 2 cards, it was going to deal 2 to me. No, it's whenever somebody plays 2, it deals damage to my opponent.
Yeah,
it's just a good rare, you know. It fits into the lizard vector, not like super strong, but it's just a good rare, you know. It does damage and kind of forces them to think about how they want to be efficient with their mana versus being shocked for 2.
Yeah, it's funny. Some decks don't care about this that much. Like some of the decks that are tapping out every turn.
Yeah.
But if you play against blue-green and you have this, they're screwed.
Exactly, yes. They're bouncing stuff to hand. They're like, wait, I need to recast this after bouncing this. It's like, how much damage do I really want to take?
When that Pawn Prophet shocks you when it enters, it's no longer so good to start recurring it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a strong card in general. And honestly, something every red deck is happy with. It's funny, I guess they don't really print hate bears that work like for both players anymore. Like Thalia, for example, is maybe the most iconic hate bear. It makes your instants and sorceries and non-creatures cast 1 more as well. If Thalia were printed today, it would just be like, no, it's just your opponent's stuff.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
Well, I guess we should address the green shell in the room, which is currently the 2nd best rare in the set. It's currently got a 64.6% game in hand win rate on 17 lands. That's real good. This thing is a 5-mana 4/6. Feckin' Green Shell. It's an elemental turtle at rare. It's got reach. Has this funny line of text on it that says if you control 10 or more lands, creatures you control get +2/+2. Not other creatures, just creatures. So if you have any sort of board state, you should win the game off that. Just get to 10 lands. But here's the cool part. When it or another creature enters with toughness greater than its power, you get to look at your top card. If it's a land, it goes in play. If it's not, it goes in hand. Really strong card.
Very strong card. It's a little weird that it has reach, though, right? Can we address that real quick? Why does this turtle have reach?
That's a good point, actually. Turtles aren't really known for getting
their reaching ability.
Yeah, something is like sprouting out of its shell. Is it like?
It looks like it's shooting something off of its shell, actually.
I don't really know what fecund or green shell mean. But...
Yeah, me neither. So I had a pretty good deck with this. Actually, I was able to draft 2 green shells.
Whoa.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think we've talked about this. I simmed too close to the sun with this card. It's not a May ability on that second thing,
You
so
drew out?
I drew out with 2 of these on the field. I did have
Awesome.
everything +4/+4. I mean, this
That's
card's nasty,
awesome.
don't get me wrong, but just watch your deck, watch your libraries.
Yeah, that's funny. This thing by itself as a 5 mana 4/6 reach that draws a card, because it is drawing a card straight up. You would put that in any deck, and then that little land thing. Sometimes land games will just go long enough that you hit your 10th land if you're ramping with the heaped harvest or something too, or the lookout frog guy. And then if you just take this thing early, skew your picks to favor cards with toughness greater than power. Don't worry, there are plenty of them in the set, especially in green. Also, this is looking like maybe the best draft chaff cube inclusion in the set. Just we have the butts thing going already. This card's strong by itself, but also would play into the butts deck. Problem is, a lot of the things that we have in the draft chaff cube that sort of fill this slot are spiders. And this guy's not a spider. If this were a spider, it'd be awesome, but oh well.
I mean, what's that big thing going on in Magic right now where you kind of retcon things? It's the Sharpie.
The Sharpieing?
Yeah. We can make a few adjustments to Green Shell.
Yeah.
All right, the next card I want to take a look at here is Hired Claw. It's the 1/2 for 1 red Lizard Mercenary. I played this card for the first time actually at the RCQ over the weekend. I had 2 of them in my deck, which was pretty good. This was a card it seems really good in the Lizard decks, but if you get this out turn 1, turn 2, you attack with it, you pump it. It's one of those cards you can just only invest into it early game. Build up your hand a little bit, go tall with this, just pumping it every turn. And eventually your opponent's going to have to deal with it, and then you have a fully stacked hand and, hopefully a decent amount of lands on board to crack off later or really start, going late game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like this one that it doesn't even have to attack itself. It's whenever you attack with 1 or more lizards.
Yes.
And this guy, this sort of thing could be a bad top deck in the late game. But by this point, you probably already have a bigger lizard that can attack out, right? So you just slam with that thing instead. It still pings, and you still get to put counters on this. Even if your lizard didn't connect, really strong way to force damage through.
Definitely.
Next up, we've got Vren the Relentless. Now, rats, they have been underperforming a little bit. I think the rats deck is still very strong, and this is maybe the best reason to go into it. Vren is the 2 blue-black 3/4 with ward 2. At rare, and it says if a creature an opponent controls would die, exile instead. And then at the beginning of each end step, so triggers on your turn and your opponent's turn, you make X 1/1 rats, where X is the number of creatures your opponents control that were exiled this turn. And those rats get +1/+1 for each other rat you control. So
such a dumb card. Can we talk about how dumb this card is? So good. Making relentless rats every time a creature your opponent controls dies, essentially.
Really strong.
It's so hard to deal with because eventually you're going to have to block these 6/6 rats, and then you're just losing more creatures, and it kind of snowballs into this massive board state that you just can't deal with.
Yeah. What are you going to do? Chump one of the rats? Because guess what? That gives them another rat.
Exactly, yes. Even if you get rid of Ren, they still have this board of massive rats. There's just no way.
That's the way it usually plays out. This thing having word 2 is massive. If this thing did not, I would be much lower on it. But actually in that one YouTube video that we uploaded, I had a Vren out, and I had maybe 3 or 4 rats together. They killed a Vren, and I'm like, honestly, I don't care at all.
Yeah.
The value has already been accrued. And the other big thing about Vren is that exile clause is not irrelevant. We were just talking about how many decks care about putting cards in the graveyard. If your opponent is planning on foraging, mostly by putting stuff in the graveyard and not by getting food, you can shut down a black-green deck almost entirely.
Yeah.
What if they draw
Threshold?
Threshold as well. What if they draw that Hazel's Nocturne, right? And they're like, well, I can't get any creatures back. My E-Witness card is offline. My other regrowths are offline. So that is not an irrelevant effect either.
All right, the next card I have here is Valley Mightcaller. It's a 1/1 for 1 green. Frog Warrior has trample. It says whenever another frog, rabbit, raccoon, or squirrel you control enters, put a 1/1 counter on it. I knew this card was going to be good. Don't get me wrong. It's a 1 mana 1/1 that obviously pumps up. But I think what really elevates this is the fact that how strong the green-white vector actually is in this set. And it really makes this card shine. If you're playing this turn 1, turn 2, let's say you play a carrot cake, obviously that pumps this, sack the carrot. It just snowballs so quick into this massive threat. Obviously, it's a 1 mana 1/1. It's going to be a good card at rare, but I think it's just elevated by how this format actually plays out.
Yeah. I honestly don't even think this is that bad of a card in the late game. Like if you're playing frogs, drawing this thing off the top might seem bad, but you're bouncing your frogs to hand over and over. There's so much graveyard recursion in this set. You can just recur some creatures. Anything with offspring guarantees you 2 creature hits, right?
Yep.
So getting to kick the like intrepid rabbit or something would put 2 counters on this, and then you buff this thing with both rabbits, and then you're attacking for 5 or whatever, like by themselves. Valiant Caller. Do not look down on this thing because it's a bad top deck or just a 1 mana 1/1. This thing is busted if you can get it down on turn 1. And honestly, whenever I have it in a deck, it is the card you most want to see in your opening hand, more so than any other removal, even something like a green shell or a do drop enchant or whatever. This guy is the real sauce.
Yeah.
Season of Loss. Where do we
begin
with this card? Maybe the card you want to see the most in a given sealed pool, right?
It's nasty.
5 mana sorcery, the black season. It's the usual season templating where it has the 5 paws worth of modes. The first one is each player sacks a creature. The second one is draw a card for each creature you controlled that died this turn. Third is each opponent loses X life, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. So I had a bit of a heartbreaker loss at the RCQ over the weekend, playing for top 8, and I needed my opponent I was playing against them, like we were pretty even, but they had an Egra in play. I was chumping it, but I was going wide. I was going to win on the crackback. All I needed was for them to not draw a good card. You'll never guess what they drew. Their foil extended art Season of Loss, slammed it. And honestly, I just started picking up my cards. I didn't even want to like count their graveyard. I just believed that with this thing on the stack, the game was functionally over.
It's so gross. That 3 module effect where each opponent loses X life, where X is the number of creature cards in graveyard. Late game, especially if you're in these squirrel decks, dude, it's just game over. Like, what do you even do?
Yeah, anyone that self-milled a bunch, you're just getting like sniped for 10 damage or something could happen.
Yeah.
But even the other modes on this are fine. This can be 5 mana Wrath. Like just each player sacks 5 creatures. By the way, those happen individually, which can lead to interesting triggers and other things going on the stack as opposed to like one of them all happening at once, right? Also, that second combination, I think a pretty common way to do this is you go 3 sacrifices and then the 2-paw mode, which is draw a card for each creature you control that died this turn. I actually cast this when my opponent had 3 creatures. I had 2. I had 3 edicts and draw 2. And even that, massive stabilizer. I went on to win the game from that. It's a Wrath that draws you 2 cards. It's great.
Pretty amazing. Next, we have Valley Flamecaller. This is the 3/3 for 2 colorless, 1 red lizard warlock. It says if a lizard, mouse, otter, or raccoon you control deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals that +1. So I like this card in the otters deck. I just wish the otters deck was better because this feels so good. Yeah. If you draft enough of the what are they called? The
Coruscation Mage or the Pinger duo.
The Pingers, yeah. You're essentially shocking them for every effect that goes off there. It's gross. I mean, this card itself isn't really great. In the other decks, it's not bad. It's going to increase your damage output, but really in that deck, it feels really strong.
Here's a funny one: Caretaker's Talent. 2 and a green, 2 and a white rather. This is one of those talents where you get in the next level by leveling it up, blah, blah, blah. It enters with whenever 1 or more tokens you control enter, draw a card. This ability triggers each turn. Level 2, you pay a white to copy a token and make another token. Level 3 is you pay 3 and a white. Creature tokens you can control get +2/+2. This is functionally unplayable outside of rabbits, it seems like. But in rabbits, oh man.
Which is the strongest vector, you know?
Yeah. So that means I think you probably do want to take this early and then push into rabbits with it because
definitely.
If you can pick up this in 2 carrot cakes, you are golden.
That's a draw during your turn and a draw during your opponent's turn. You know, if you sack the carrot cake. You had 2 of these in I believe, was it a sealed pool that you had with these?
It was my pre-release, yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
And I did end up losing. I went 1-2 with the deck, but I had 2 copies of this and 2 carrot cakes and some other token makers.
It's gross.
I played Greenway at the pre-release, actually. I now understand why my deck did not do very well. I didn't have enough token makers. I tried to go big. I was playing like Galewind Moose. I think that was a mistake in hindsight. But what was I going to not play a Moose at pre-release? Like,
I mean, that card's good.
yeah, I got flattened by a red-white deck playing really good mice, like triple mouse rare sort of stuff, and then I got demolished by a Maha in round 3. But anyway, I think maybe I had the right bones in play. So Caretaker's Talent, not only does it combo with that, but something I've actually found is that it turns all of your opponent's gifts into cards. So if your opponent tries to gift you a food or a fish, guess what? That's a food plus a card for you.
Wow,
So
yeah.
this being a hate card against your opponent gifting you stuff, like, I don't know, your opponent might think twice before they gift you that tapped fish if it also draws you a card.
It's pretty good. I didn't even think about that fact. Yeah, wow. It does elevate this.
Why don't we talk about Igra while we're at it? Let's get into some mythics here. Igra, Eater of All. This is the 5-mana 6/6 ward sack of food. Yeah, we get it, because it turns all other creatures into foods. All other creatures are food artifacts in addition to their types, and have the food text. And then whenever food is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put 2/1/1 counters on Igra, Eater of All. So a couple notes about this card, because this is obviously busted. Like, if you take this, you slam it, you don't look back, you splash it maybe. Igra is very difficult to remove because of the whole ward sack of food. It's actually probably easiest for squirrels to remove it because they might have a food laying around. They might even have a heaped harvest, or a carrot cake might be sitting around, like an actual food that you want to sacrifice. Even then, you're probably still not happy about trading it off for the Igra, but this thing is nuts. You got to do what you got to do. But the funny thing about Igra, the best way to play around it that I've found is just let it get massive. Yep. Just treat it as if it's like a 50-50. Pray they don't have overprotect to give it trample, and then just find a way to chump it or gain life around it or go wider than it, make a bunch of tokens. There are ways to deal with this that don't involve killing it. Maybe one of the funniest ways to interact with this, it is other creatures or food. But that actually turns on some of your that actually turns on some of your naturalized effects. So something like Paw Patch Formation, or the Hivespine Wolverine, those are now removal spells because their creatures are now food as well. It's not just your stuff. So if you can, naturalize one of their like 6/6s while this is on the field, like, yeah, they got a massive value by having an active Igra, but you can sort of play that for value yourself by turning your Hivespine Wolverine into a massive Chupacabra or Flame Tongue Kavu, whatever you're going to call a creature that ETBs to kill something else.
Yeah, I actually played against Igra. And it's funny you mentioned this, kind of let it go tall, because it really is the only way to deal with it, unless you can remove it. I had a Rail on field, so I was just making the 1/1 Rocket. They had like a 20/20 Igra. Exactly, yeah. And you can't do anything. Like, there's only two ways that come to mind that you can give trample in this. It's the Overprotect and the Hunter's Talent. And if your opponent doesn't have that, this thing's just a massive kind of, chump blocking.
Here's another one I want to talk about. Hugs Grizzly Guardian. That's the X red 5/5 trample. Looks like it could be a raccoon, but this is a badger. Got to be careful of that. Badger warrior mythic. 4-mana 5/5 trample. Solid. But when it ETBs, exile the top X cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. And you may play an additional land on each of your turns. Something I noticed about Hugs while playing it actually at the RCQ this past weekend was that it pairs really well with ways to pick it back up, which green does have a few of. There's the 3-mana 3/3 reach that you can pick back up a permanent. You really want at least one copy of that in your deck if you have a Hugs, because just slamming Hugs on turn 4, or if you can ramp into it turn 3, is obviously just pushed. It's a 5/5 trampler. There's so many tiny animals in this set. Smacking with a 5/5 trampler will just be good. But if you can pick it back up in the late game, then, I don't know, slamming 7-8 mana into this thing total, getting to flip 4-5 cards off of it, you'll win that game very easily. Big fan of Hugs.
Oh, me too. I love this card. Yeah, even just playing it for 4-mana 5/5 that lets you play an additional land is just a great card. It's just all around, yeah. Amazing.
Let's offer some words of warning.
Yeah, so the card here, I mean, I think the name is actually a giveaway. It's called Thunder Trap Trainer.
Thunder's a trap.
Yeah. So it's the 1/2 for 1 colorless, 1 blue, Otter Wizard. ETBs, you look at the top 4, reveal a non-creature, non-land, and put it into your hand, put the rest in the bottom of the library. Has offspring 4, so you can pay 6 to kind of get double this trigger effect. I see this card getting passed around all the time. Nobody's taking this card. Obviously, Otter's the weakest vector here. And we had a card called Bolus's Augur not too long ago, which is essentially this for a 1/3. You're only looking at the top 3. it just doesn't feel great. Like, obviously, you're going to be able to kind of find the card you maybe want, but I don't know. I think this needs prowess or something to really elevate it to being a rare.
I cast this and whiffed on it on both halves, and I was like,
man.
All right, I put 6 mana into 3 power and toughness total.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's just it never really feels all that great. Like the body you get off of this, like I don't think this should be a rare.
And this is actually a great card, but I do have a word of warning about it. Dark Star Augur. All right, let's just say there's a lot of cowards out there, because I do see this thing getting picked like 4th, 5th pick. Bats is really good. Yep. You can draft a good Bats deck. Abzan seems to be the good combo to be in. White has some strong commons. Green has some strong commons. Black is probably the 3rd best color behind the 2 of them. And Dark Star Augur, if you can get this thing into play, if you're at like at least, I don't know, I might not pay the offspring cost if I'm at like 12 or less life. But if I'm like at like 13 and I have like a Life Creed duo or a way to gain life repeatedly in play, I'm slamming both halves of this. If you draw 3 cards a turn, guess what? You'll just draw a kill spell and you can kill one of your own guys and you won't even care because you're up like 7 cards on your opponent. I think people don't realize just how good drawing 3 cards a turn is.
It's pretty crazy. And there's a lot of good effects that you could set the top of your library with. There's Mind Whisker if you're in the blue-green or the blue-black vector, which lets you surveil the top. Bell's also pretty good with the Augur because you can put that land on top. You know, you're guaranteed not to lose the damage there. Yeah, I don't know. This feels like such a U card. Like, I know you want to slam this and like take as much damage as possible to get that value, but I don't know.
Yeah. And plus, with Dark Confidant effects, you do sort of want to be smart about it. You can draft ways to sacrifice them. This one's a little hard. Usually with Bob, Dark Confidant himself, you just start attacking with it once you get low enough, and then your opponent at some point is forced to, assuming you've been dealing them damage, forced to block it and trade off with it, and then you're free. The Dark Star Augur, it's funny, because you have 2 little flying blockers, sometimes you want to start just jamming them into their flyers, but then that means when they swing back with their flyer, you can't chump block with it to get rid of it anymore. So sometimes you want to like attack with one of them and leave one back. That seems to be the best way to do it. And I did want to mention, there's actually 5 rares right now that have sub 50% game in hand win rate.
Wow.
The lowest in the set right now, according to 17 lands, is Artist's Talent. That's the one in a red non-creature spell, rummaging, make them cheaper, something about dealing extra damage. It's even got an otter on the art, in case you were still wondering. For the common good, that was the XX green card that looks sort of like Pest Infestation, but it's nothing like Pest Infestation. It's you make X tokens that are copies of a target token, and they get indestructible, and you gain a life for each token you control, and there's a squirrel in the art and whatever. No, awful card. Do not play it. Festival of Embers, the 5 mana enchantment that lets you repay instants and sorceries by paying an extra life in addition to other costs. So not surprising that another instant and sorcery one whiffed. This one is interesting. Dawn's Truce, the what's that green
Heroic
card?
Intervention?
Heroic Intervention.
Yeah.
Heroic Intervention. Turns out that sort of effect is just not really for limited.
No,
Commander players.
It doesn't really play into like any of the Valiant things. It's nice to save your board, but it's not really gonna. Yeah, you know, there's not enough board wipes to make this like super relevant.
Yeah, and this one, man, I've cast this card a bunch of times already because I'm trying to make it work. It's Alania Divergent Storm, the 5 mana 3/5 legendary otter. And whenever you cast an otter or instant or sorcery, if it's the first one of those that you cast this turn, you can gift them a card and copy it. Now, hear me out. This is what I love in cards. It's a symmetrical effect, but you can break the symmetry. I guess it sort of breaks it for you. But the joke is, if you are casting and then copying an otter, yes, they get the card, right? You're not actually going up on cards, but you are going up on mana advantage. So if you get to, say, copy a kicked Coruscation Mage or something, then you are getting that card on board without paying the mana for it, where they still have to invest the mana into their card. So you can bury them in extra cards, but you're getting the mana advantage. So I love the design of Alania. I have tried playing it a bunch of times, but I think the 48 point whatever percent win rate speaks for itself.
This just feels like a commander card insert. Like that's where this card's going to be played. You know, I feel like it is a trap for a limited because you really do have to build around it, and Otters is not where you want to be.
It even says target. You may have target opponent draw a card, so you can politic with it in commander.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, and then wow, I'm impressed. Wishing Well managed to creep over the 50% win rate into 51.
I'm shocked by that. Really, I would never touch that card.
I guess maybe it's being played in decks with like good instants and sorceries that are cheap anyway. So like just playing good cheap instants and sorceries will win you games regardless. I don't know. Well, those are some rares from Bloomburrow. Is that what we're calling this?
There we go. I like it.
Yeah. Let's jump into Teferi and Tybalt for the set. What's up with you?
For the set or for life, I guess.
Well, I mean, we can do that later. We'll save that for the end of the format.
Yeah, there we go. So Teferi this week. I mean, I don't have to tell you guys all my personal life stuff, but my wife's doing pretty good. We had our 28-week appointment this week. Everything's looking good for the baby. We also did some tours for daycares, which is weird to do. You know, it's a little strange, but we made a decision on that. You know,
nice.
Makes me feel like an adult, which I don't technically feel like yet, but I kind of guess I have to be if I'm going to be a father. But
now, it's all good. How does one judge a daycare? What are you looking for?
So we actually, the first one we walked into, they're like, "Oh, I didn't realize we had a tour set up," and there's like 2 people in this place for like 20 kids. I'm like, all right, this is sus. I'm like, let's leave. Second place we went to, amazing. They had somebody working the front desk. You know, they had a better kid. So you want to look for a better kid to teacher ratio. So the infant room was 1-4, which is pretty good. Just a much better vibe. And like, that's the one we ended up going with. It's the same price range. Just look around if you're in the market for daycare. That kind of leads into the Tybalt too. We still have a lot to do for actually preparing for the baby. This is the last room I have to paint in the house, and I'm so tired of painting, but I need to get it done. We need to set up the nursery. So Tybalt's just the housework I still need to kind of finish up around the place.
Are you allowed to spray paint a baby's room? Is that too many chemicals?
You want to come in and do a nice mural for me?
Yeah. Nice toxic fumes in there.
Probably not, but maybe I'll look into it.
So my Teferi this week, actually just yesterday, I took my parents to New York City, which we found out, despite living in New Jersey, they hadn't been to New York City in over 30 years.
Wow.
Like, just not, I wouldn't call my parents city people, whereas I can thrive in any environment. So I don't mind being in the city for a bit. We took them to see a Broadway show. Have you heard of Six?
We talked about it briefly. Yeah, how was it? Was it good?
Oh, it was awesome. Yeah, really fun. It's sort of like the idea is it's the 6 wives of King Henry VIII. And it's like them all getting together to have a competition for who was like dealt the worst hand, but it's tons of clever writing and innuendos and wordplay.
Hopefully nobody lost their heads.
There was a lot of jokes about head. We'll go with that. A lot more than I remembered for taking my parents to.
Oops.
Yeah, they loved it. So it was
good, man. That's good to hear.
My Tybalt this week is, well, partially the rain, because it's been kind of nonstop pouring up here, which is nice. It's cooled things off a bit. But my big Tybalt, which I do not really want to think about even, is that I recently checked my school email and found out that I've already got the welcome back email.
No.
Years, so, I was thinking like, oh yeah, I got like a month of summer left. No, I do not. So
that went quick, man.
Back into the mindset. Yeah, honestly, let's jam at least one more RCQ before the fall gets here, because I'm not ready.
How early do you guys start? Like, how early do you start before the kids actually start coming in?
We've got trainings the week before, and those will be casual. And any of the brand new teachers have to do like a long-term summer training.
Gotcha.
But those of us that have been around the block a few times, we're gonna blow it off. Honestly, I will probably play Magic with some of the teachers during our summer.
Awesome, man. That's good.
Yeah, I'll be doing that instead of making lesson plans. So I guess that's the real Tybalt. Thanks for listening, folks. Be sure to hop in the Discord if you're not there already. If you're not, you're missing out on Sirkovitz. He commits memes there sometimes. So yeah, make sure you're hopping in there and just chatting with the aficionado community. It's a great place to be. We're always posting trophy decks, bounty boards. Have people claimed bounties in the set? Maybe we made them too hard.
I think we did, because I was taking a look at them the other day. I'm like, I haven't even hit any of these yet, and I've drafted the set a ton.
Yeah, maybe we overcorrected from the easy ones last set. We might have to make some edits to the bounties then. Patrons, thank you so much as always. If you're interested in supporting us on Patreon, hop on over, take a look at some of the cool perks. Include stickers, show notes, all sorts of behind the scenes stuff, including fun pre-shows. Pre-show this week, you could see Tyler curb stomp some dude with a squirrel's deck. And feel free to follow us on Twitter and whatever else. By the way, you know what I noticed? We still have a perfect 5-star rating on Spotify. So
Perfect.
if you'd
Let's
like
keep it that way.
to, if you'd like to go and review bomb us in the positive direction, whatever the opposite of a bomb is, review support us. Hey, we'll take that too. Okay, so I have something that you reminded me of earlier. I'm hoping this works. I just sent it to you on Discord. I'm pulling it up. I think I can pull up TikTok on my.
Oh yeah. The redacted.
I wanted to show off some. I just saw this on my TikTok feed recently. I wanted to show off some of these Sharpie cards that I found particularly funny. This is the only one that it actually made me pause and go like, oh, like this is funny.
Jesus.
So here we have, this was something else we can do. I like trying to guess what the original card was, see if we actually know it. This was originally a Shipbreaker Kraken. This is, if you see on the screen here, Hipbreaker Ken. 6 mana for a creature, Ken. It is a 6/6, and it says you pay 6 blue. There's been a little bit redacted here, but you put 4 1/1 counters on, then a little bit more redacted, up to 4 target creatures. Creatures don't untap during their controller's untap steps.
Oh, wow. This becomes like a blue Vorinclex for creatures then with that untap thing.
Yeah, isn't that funny? Still a little expensive. I've seen some cards in this go pretty cheap. Here's a pretty good one.
Soup.
We have Soup. Soup is 2 blue. It's an instant. What was this?
Something sloop? No.
Suspicious cover-up?
Ooh, wow. I think you right on that.
Conspicuous cover. It's something like that. It's the 2 blue counter target spell. It says if that spell is countered this way, redacted, put it into your library.
Oh man, this was like an alchemy card.
On it. Yeah.
They redacted the oh Jesus, I can never remember the flavor text. Here's what it says: first dispose of the evidence, then soup. Okay.
All right, we got another one here. Witness the foot.
Okay.
That's probably future. I don't know.
No, because they got feet. Oh yeah. Witness the future. Yeah.
2 and a blue. It's a sorcery. Target player shuffles their graveyard into their library. You look at the top 4 cards of your library, then put those cards into your hand and rest.
Oh, thank you. I need a rest.
I interpreted this first as you shuffle your graveyard in your library, you look at the top 4, put those 4 into your hand, and then the rest into your hand.
Oh, I thought there was like take a nap in between.
You know, that probably makes more sense.
This interestingly doesn't draw either. It just puts into hand. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, it gets around some draw stuff. So here we have Glug. Okay. This card's old. I don't know what set this is or what card this is. Something slug, like giant slug or something.
That makes sense, yeah.
And the slug appears to be glugging down a soda or something here. 1 of the black for a 1/1. It says you pay 5 mana. Choose an ability. Glug gains that ability.
It doesn't say target like either. Like, can you just choose anything that exists in Magic's universe off of this?
Is this fair? Is this one a fair card? Let's say this was limited. So this is a 2 mana 1/1, pay 5, give an ability. If this was
any ability,
like the usual suite, like first strike, flying, lifelink, vigilance, double strike, maybe not protection.
You're thinking like
this is a fair card, right? Like you can.
Oh, interesting. I thought it was like any ability, like
like Annihilator 20 or something. Like
not even like like evergreen abilities, just like anything.
Huh. Yeah, this one seems pretty fair. If it was just like regular combat abilities, I would.
Do they have judges for these formats? How do you?
For Sharpie Cube, I think
yeah, for Sharpie Cube,
the least drunk.
Yeah.
How about Yager? Black for an ear Gob Rogue. It has ear. Touch it. Ear of Ren's Run. This one is sort of just junk text. This one doesn't mean anything.
Ear tribal.
Here's one for you.
Oh, Jesus.
I don't really want to say this one out loud. Viewer, just go ahead and read this on the screen. But it used to be assembled alphas. The M has been removed. It's 6 mana. For a wolf, whenever formerly assembled alphas blocks or becomes blocked by a creature, assembled alphas deals 3 redacted 3 damage to that creature.
So is that 9? Are we taking this as like a multiplication thing?
I think that's 33. I think that's 33 damage. Okay. Here's one.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
We've got Trump.
All right.
1 in a red. Trump deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. Deal 5 damage to that permanent instead.
That's actually really funny. The flip flopper.
We've got now elves. This obviously used to be Llanowar. This one's iconic. It's still green for a 1/1. But this one has manipulated the flavor text in a very fun way. It has summon elves, of course. It's a 1 mana 1/1. Tap, add green to your mana pool. Play a forest.
So do you have to play a forest for this ability to resolve? It doesn't say. Is that part of the activated ability?
Like, does the forest come from your hand? Does it come from the library? Do you just make a forest and you just put a forest token in play? I don't know. Beetle.
All right.
This one I think used to be Beetle anyway. This one is green. For a 0/1. When Beetle enters the battlefield, put Beetle on your shoulder.
This feels like an unset card now.
you just put it on your shoulder.
Just a little guy.
Just a little guy. How about Apple with the Past? This is I love Grapple with the Past. This is just Apple with the Past. 1 of the green. Put 3 cards into your graveyard, then return a creature and your graveyard to your hand.
Okay. Emrakul Desires. Pill.
Emrakul's popping. And of course, we've got Ben.
You like this card too, which is even better.
Formerly Thraven Inspector, one of my favorite cards ever. White, and this appears to have been arted into a Ben Franklin. Man old as the creature type. Still a 1/2. When Thraven Inspector enters the battlefield, put a cool artifact token onto the battlefield.
Okay.
With, 2, draw a card. What do you think of that? You just get a bad clue.
Oh, well, yeah, you're right. It doesn't say sacrifice. That is a really cool token.
Yeah. Topple Sue. This is some sort of lawsuit, I think. 2 and a white. You tap a permanent. This is a funny one to read. Topple Sue. 2 and a white. Instant. Tap target permanent. In fact, destroy it. Draw a card.
The Urge. Have you ever played Baldur's Gate 3?
No, I haven't.
All right, never mind then. It's all good.
Mr. has. What is it?
The Urge in Baldur's Gate is essentially this like dark entity that you could play as that wants to kill. So the fact that it says tap it, actually destroy it is, and the Urge is just, it's perfect.
It's on brand.
It's on brand, yeah.
This one is Gasp. 2 mana. Artifact. Something, Contagion Clasp, maybe?
Maybe, yeah.
So this one is another clever use of rules text. When Gasp enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter, a -1/-1 counter on any number of permanents and or players, then give each another counter of a kind already there.
Oh, wow.
That seems pretty strong for 2 mana.
Really good. Yeah, Containment Engine.
Yeah. Can I interest you in Crunt? White black for a pie.
Ooh.
Whenever you lose, you win.
That's actually really good.